This is the kind of thing that I actually worry about. And if you live in a densely populated urban area, you probably need to think about this as well. Imagine it's after midnight, you're hanging out at home, you're watching TV, doing whatever you're doing before going to bed or whatever, and then you're this loud banging on your door, whether it's front or back, a loud banging on the door, and you ask, who's there, who's there? The banging continues, and then the door starts to rattle, and it sounds like somebody's trying to gain entry. You acquire your pistol, probably a pistol, and you go to answer the door. You have your gun in your hand. Normally it's going to be down by your side. That's what I do. And you open the door and you get lit up and you're killed. What happened? This actually happened to a gentleman named Andrew Scott in Lake County, Florida, in the Orlando area, and in 2012, and the 11th Circuit Federal Appeals Court ruled that pretty much it sucks to be him, right? That his rights weren't violated, even though the cops did not announce themselves. There was no indication that there were police at all. They could have been gang members trying to do a home invasion. And he was not apparently pointing his weapon at anyone, but they saw the weapon and killed him instantly. There is precedent from the Supreme Court that explains why this can happen. And there is a state, only one, in the country that has created a law that protects armed citizens within the Castle Doctrine from this circumstance. I'll talk about that. But what do you do? What do you do if that happens? You hear this noise. What do you do? I have my thoughts. Well, now that I know what that ruling is, and it was from a federal appeals court, and I don't live in Indiana, which is the only state in the country that would protect me from a situation like that, I would arm myself, preferably with a long gun. I would not go to the door to answer it, not if it's being aggressively shaken and pounded on. I would get enough distance so that I had cover of the door, and I would be dialing 911, saying there is a home invasion in progress, and give the address, and then say, I don't know who these people are, but I will defend myself if they get in. That's what I would do. And if they come in, then I'm going to repel boarders, and I will use the appropriate caliber that would be very effective to do that. And I may die in the process, but so will they. And then my state, such as it is, would take care of the rest. But let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling and the doctrine, which is very controversial, by the way, that supports that. Even though there was no warrant, no identification, no indication that there were cops at all, they were protected by a doctrine called qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is supported by the Supreme Court and applies to public servants. Public servants doing their job from being individually prosecuted for damages or some mistake that they make while doing their job. Now, I think that's a stupid thing to do, to have, and it is very controversial. The state of Indiana has had a law, and I'll explain what that is, on Castle Doctrine to protect citizens from that. The other part of this situation is there is the Fourth Amendment that says you should be protected from unreasonable search and seizure, and certainly no warrant, no indication of law enforcement, and they want to invade your house, basically breach into the house of an innocent person, wrong place, is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But because the person was exercising their Second Amendment, the effect of the 11th Circuit's ruling says, well, you're going to have to choose. If you use your Second Amendment, you're going to diminish your right to the Fourth Amendment. Now, there is no brain-dead logic in the world that says use of one amendment diminishes the use of another, except at the 11th Circuit down, and they cover Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. So what do you do with that, right? Well, like I said, I'm going to get a long gun with the appropriate caliber, and I'm going to provide distance between myself and that doorway. I'm going to be on 911 saying there's a home invasion in progress. I don't know who they are. I am armed. I'm going to defend myself if they come inside. Hurry up and get here. And I'll keep the phone going so they can hear whatever they need to hear. That's if I live anywhere other than Indiana. So caution, if you live anywhere outside of the state of Indiana, you really don't want to go to the door not knowing who's there with a firearm in your hand. I mean, just don't do that unless you know who's coming. If you know the pizza guy's coming, great. Better yet, if you have the ability to install one of those wireless security cameras so you can see who's at your front door or in the surrounding areas of your front door, then spend $100, $200 and do that if you can. Otherwise, exercise a bit of caution. Now let's talk about what Indiana has done. So in 2006, the Indiana legislature amended the state's castle doctrine. And it did that in response to a state Supreme Court ruling that for all intents and purposes said that a citizen, if a cop came into your house and was raping your wife and you killed the cop to stop him from raping your wife, that was illegal and you get the death penalty because it was illegal to shoot a cop under any circumstances under the current law. So and it was bizarre, right? And it happened because there was a domestic argument, cops showed up, cops wanted to come in, the husband said, no, you can't, I don't want you to, and it didn't have to, they didn't have a warrant, they didn't have reason to come in, there was no fighting going on, and the husband pushed one of the cops back out and was arrested for assault and battery, blah, 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 all the things that happened, and he got the book thrown at him and appealed and lost the appeal. So the legislature said, well, wait a minute, we can't have a situation where a public servant has immunity from the law. So they passed this addendum to this castle doctrine that says you can use reasonable force to repel someone who is trying to gain entry to your house or your property without your permission. Now, if they are legally trying to gain entry, like, I'm a cop, have a warrant, stand aside, please, or some variation of that, then you can't just light them up because you don't want them coming in your house. I mean, they're legally there, they have a warrant, you get the picture. But if in the previous case you hear this banging on the door, you don't know who they are, they don't identify themselves, and they breach, and you light them up and kill a few folks, in Indiana, sucks to be them, because they don't get immunity by being stupid. And guess what? You don't have cops anywhere in Indiana going to the wrong place. They check. They check to see, is this the right place, right person, right everything? Okay. Do we have a warrant? Yes. Good to go. Well, that's the way it should be. But that's not the way it is in a lot of places in this country. So if you're in Indiana, you're probably safe. if you're using good judgment. If you're outside of Indiana, you probably need to pay attention. And if you're in Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, which is the jurisdiction of the 11th Circuit, you probably want to be extra careful from these Yahoo cops down there, especially if you live in an urban area or even rural area. So with respect to Indiana, again, let me be very clear, right? It is not the open season killing cops law. And that has been out there in some of the news articles and some of that. It clearly says you cannot use any force if the public servant isn't a threat. Sound reasonable? No threat, no force. And you can't use lethal force unless there is a lethal threat. Same as for anybody else. So just keep that in mind. The rules of engagement don't change. What it really says is that public servants, regardless of who they are, do not have immunity from being stupid and harming citizens. So now they're on equal footing with citizens. My view is that every state, one, should have a castle doctrine, and two, should have the pieces of the castle doctrine that Indiana has implemented. And I think that would save a lot of heartburn for a lot of people. What do you think? Man, as always, thanks for watching. Carry on.